Hi, my name is Wayne, and this is Type Tested. I have a fairly short video here today. I've been in the process of cleaning the KMM that I've been working on for a little while, and it's time to get down to these little guys. Now, I don't know if they got a formal name. I just call them the trip levers and return springs. If you look at the typewriter here, what we have, and everything's out of this, so I can't exactly show you how everything connects, but these fit down here. Get some light on it. You can see it hooks around that bar there and attaches to, the spring attaches to these little holes down here. And when the intermediate lever, the sub lever, which connects to the other end of the spring here, or the other end of the lever, you can see that the spring is kind of captive to the lever itself. So the hole down below, it will be pulled up, and then the spring, by acting on that portion here, will pull it back in place. Now what this does is when the key lever throws the intermediate lever, which is also removed, to throw the type bar, the back half of it will pull on this here, which will then lift this bar, which will actually trip the escape on the Royal. And that's how the escapement is done on all of the Royal standards, at least to the HH. I can't say beyond that because I don't actually have one from beyond that to look at, but I know that it exists from the Royal 1 all the way through at least the HH. So we're talking into the mid-50s. I actually don't like that particular method. I think it's kind of unnecessarily complicated, additional parts and all that, but it did the job. Now, the problem with these is that these springs, they sit horizontally like this. So if you think about the machine, it's leaning on its back right now, but if I turn it upright, this, with the hook pointing upward, is the top of the spring, and that's the bottom. The bottom of these springs, if I get a little more light on it, you can see it looks pretty clean, but you turn it over and it looks pretty crappy. And these have a tendency to rust. It's kind of hard to see here, but you can tell that there is a decent amount of oxidation on some of these springs. So I have two of them here. I think that one's a little worse than this one, but this one's also pretty bad. So this is also where all the dirt tends to settle. So what I've been doing is I've been going through and trying to clean this up, and I will take and stretch them out just a little bit and then spray them with the cleaner. If I can get the cleaner to come out of the doggone bottle. Okay, let's try the other bottle. So I pull it out, stretch it so that I can try to get in between the loops when I brush. I'm not brushing terribly aggressively. I'm just trying to make sure that I get inside the spring so I can do a pretty good job of getting everything out. All right, I will take and kind of pat that dry, blow it, and then clean off the metal here. Now I actually can take the spring off if I choose to, but it's not necessary for most of these because the metal itself just isn't that dirty, and the springs don't really require that level of attention. However, and I mean, you can see that that's already looking a lot better than it was. And I will throw these things in evaporust before I put them back in, but I just want to show that. But the problem here is that these springs, as they rust, notice they're fairly thin. They can rust all the way through. And as I was cleaning one of these, it broke. Well, and you can see here, all these dark spots are where there is a decent amount of oxide on this spring. So you expect this to happen as you're working on these typewriters. However, there's an interesting point about this. Now, I could get a replacement. They're not actually all that hard to find. But I don't actually need to do that. Because you see, these springs, if you think about it, it's only being pulled, it's set about there, and it's only being pulled about there, and then going back. So this spring is actually quite a bit longer than it needs to be in order to do its job. And I think that's partly a function of the length of the trip link here, or trip lever, that they wanted to have a decent amount of spring so that it wouldn't set over time. There's less of a chance of that. But that gives me an opportunity to fix this spring in a way that most people might not think about. Let me see if I can zoom in here real tight and show you what I'm looking at. So if you look at the spring, the very edge, go to the other side so I can move it, you can see where the break is. And you can see a similar break right there on the other half. So what I can actually do is I can take these springs and I can turn them against each other with a little bit of force. And if I'm lucky, I can get these coils to spin around and grab. And if I keep going, I can get a couple of links entangled. So I can entangle the spring in with itself and then go back to the other end here and adjust the position so that it sits right. So we go ahead and back out a bit. You can see now that this spring is going to basically work the way it's supposed to, and there is no permanent connection. It's just the fact that two springs are entangled with themselves. Now, the only reason this works is because the spring is captive on this lever here. Lever going right through the middle of the spring. So that will keep the spring from deflecting off to one side. Because it's being held in a column by the lever here, when I stretch this down, the spring's going to perform pretty much the same way it would from the beginning. So in that way, if I'm careful about it, and I make sure that I do enough without overdoing it, and 2 or 3 loops ought to be enough. And note that you're turning them left, not right, because you're turning it against itself. That doing that, I can actually save this spring without having to find a new one. Now, of course, if there are other weak spots in here, it can risk a second break. Now, I can do that same fix 2, maybe 3 times, but that would be it. Then I'd have to look for a replacement, and that third one I would probably want to make a replacement. Probably even on the second. But anyway, I just thought I would show you a little quick improvised method of salvaging one of these springs on a Royal, because you're gonna find broken springs on an old Royal, especially the older 5s and number 1s. I have a friend who has what looks like a number 1 that I might actually be interested in buying, except that all the springs are severely rusted and several of them are actually popped. So I don't know about the quality of the remainder of the spring to be able to do this kind of replacement. So anyway, like I said, I will go throw this in some evaporust to get rid of the rest of it, give it another thorough cleaning, and see what happens. And as long as this stays together, once it's in place, it's not coming undone because the spring will not rotate. So it's as good as if it had never failed. Anyway, there you have it. Royal spring entanglement theory. Once again, my name is Wayne, and this is Type Tested.